Margaret Chen pulled her worn jacket tighter as she stepped into the grand lobby of Steinway Concert Hall. It was nearly 9 in the evening, and the November wind had followed her inside, making her shiver. She had been cleaning office buildings in Manhattan for 15 years now, but this place always made her feel small. The marble floors gleamed under the crystal chandeliers and everything smelled expensive. She wasn't supposed to be here tonight, but her co-worker had called in sick, and Margaret needed the extra money. Her cleaning cart squeaked as she pushed it down the hallway toward the main concert hall. She could hear music coming from inside. Beautiful, complicated piano music that seemed to fill every corner of the building. Margaret paused for a moment, her hand on the door handle. She knew she shouldn't interrupt, but her supervisor had been clear. The hall needed to be cleaned tonight, no exceptions. She opened the door as quietly as possible and slipped inside. The concert hall was mostly dark except for the stage, where a single grand piano sat under bright lights. A man with silver hair was playing, his fingers moving across the keys with impossible speed. 3 other musicians stood nearby, holding their instruments and watching him play. They all wore expensive clothes, the kind Margaret saw in store windows but never went inside to touch. Margaret tried to be invisible. She started dusting the seats in the back row, moving slowly and carefully. The music was so beautiful it made her chest ache. She hadn't heard piano music like this in so long. Too long. She forced herself to focus on her work, wiping down the armrests and picking up forgotten programs from the floor, for almost 20 minutes. She worked in silence while the musicians practiced. She was doing fine, staying out of the way until she reached the 4th row. That's when it happened. Her cleaning cart hit a bump in the carpet, and before she could stop it, the whole thing rolled forward. The mop handle clattered against a seat with a loud bang that echoed through the hall. The music stopped immediately. Margaret froze, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. All 4 musicians turned to look at her. The silver-haired man at the piano stood up, his face twisted with annoyance. "What are you doing?" His voice had a thick accent, French maybe, and he sounded angry. "Can't you see we're working here?" "I'm so sorry," Margaret said quickly, grabbing the cart to steady it. "I have to clean tonight. My supervisor said—" "I don't care what your supervisor said," the man interrupted. He walked toward her, and Margaret recognized him now. Victor Arnaud. She had seen his face on posters in the subway. He was famous, one of the best pianists in the world. "This is a private rehearsal. We have a concert in 2 days. Do you understand how important this is?" Margaret nodded, her face burning with embarrassment. "Yes, sir, I'll be quick. I'll stay out of your way." Victor made a dismissive sound and started to turn back toward the piano. But then he stopped. He looked at Margaret again, and this time there was something mean in his eyes. A small smile appeared on his lips. "You know what?" he said, loud enough for the other musicians to hear. "Since you interrupted us, maybe you should entertain us instead. Have you ever played piano?" The other musicians laughed. It wasn't kind laughter. Margaret felt her stomach drop. "I'd a long time ago," she said quietly. Victor's smile grew wider. "Perfect. Come here then. Play something for us." He gestured toward the piano with a dramatic sweep of his arm. "We would love to hear what a cleaning woman can do with a $2 million instrument." Margaret stood still, her hands gripping the cleaning cart. Every part of her wanted to run out of the room. But something in Victor's voice, that mocking tone, that absolute certainty that she would embarrass herself, made her angry. It was an old anger buried deep for so many years that she had almost forgotten it was there. "Come on," Victor said, his voice dripping with fake encouragement. "Don't be shy. You said you played before, right? Show us." The other musicians were grinning now, waiting for the show. One of them pulled out his phone. Margaret could see him starting to record. They wanted to capture her failure, to laugh about it later. The cleaning lady who thought she could play piano. Margaret let go of the cart. Her legs felt shaky as she walked down the aisle toward the stage. Each step felt like it took forever. Victor moved aside with an exaggerated bow, gesturing to the piano bench like he was presenting a throne. The other musicians backed up a little, giving her space, making sure she was in the center of the phone camera's view. Margaret sat down on the bench. The piano was enormous up close, its black surface so shiny she could see her reflection. Her work uniform looked shabby against all this elegance. Her hands looked rough and red from years of cleaning chemicals. She placed them on the keys, and they were cold against her skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Margaret stared at the keys, and suddenly she wasn't in the concert hall anymore. She was 19 years old again, sitting at a different piano, in a different country, playing for judges who would change her life. She remembered the weight of her mother's hand on her shoulder before she went on stage. She remembered her father's proud smile from the audience. Then she remembered the phone call 2 months later, the police officer's voice telling her about the accident. The rain, the truck that ran a red light, how her parents had died instantly. She remembered her 3 younger siblings crying in their tiny apartment. She remembered selling her piano to pay for groceries because there was no money left and no one else to take care of them. Victor cleared his throat behind her, impatient. "Whenever you're ready," he said, that mocking tone still in his voice. Margaret took a deep breath. Her fingers found their positions on the keys like they had never left. Muscle memory is a strange thing. You can bury it, ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, but it never really goes away. She started playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The first notes came out soft and uncertain, like she was testing whether this was real. But then something opened up inside her, something that had been locked away for 15 years. Her fingers remembered what to do. They moved faster, surer, flowing across the keys like water. The music filled the concert hall. It was beautiful and sad and angry all at once. Margaret closed her eyes, and tears started running down her face, but she kept playing. She played every memory she had buried, every dream she had killed, every night she had cried herself to sleep after scrubbing floors for 12 hours, every time she had walked past a music store and forced herself not to look inside. Behind her, no one was laughing anymore. Victor's smile had disappeared completely. His mouth was open, his face pale. The other musicians had lowered their instruments, staring at Margaret like they were seeing a ghost. The one with the phone was still recording, but his hand was shaking. Margaret played the final notes and let them fade into silence. Her hands stayed on the keys for a moment before she pulled them back into her lap. She was shaking. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and stood up from the bench, not looking at anyone. "I should get back to work," she said quietly. No one said anything. Victor just stood there, frozen, watching her walk back to her cleaning cart. Margaret grabbed the handle and pushed it toward the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She needed to get out of here. She needed to breathe. As she reached the door, she heard Victor's voice behind her, quiet and completely different from before. "Wait. Please wait." But Margaret didn't stop. She pushed through the door and let it close behind her, leaving the concert hall and its stunned musicians in silence. Margaret didn't sleep that night. She sat in her small apartment in Queens, staring at the wall, her hands still trembling. What had she done? She had broken her own rule. For 15 years she had stayed away from pianos. She had walked past music stores without looking in the windows. She had changed the radio station whenever classical music came on. She had built walls around that part of herself, brick by brick, until she thought it was gone forever. But it wasn't gone. That was the problem. Playing tonight had ripped open something inside her that she couldn't close again. Her fingers still tingled from touching the keys. She could still hear the music in her head, feel it moving through her body like it used to. At 6 a.m, her phone rang. Margaret looked at it, confused. No one called her this early. The number was unknown. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Is this Margaret Chen?" A woman's voice, professional and urgent. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Jennifer Park. I'm a reporter with the New York Times. I wanted to ask you about what happened last night at Steinway Hall." Margaret's stomach dropped. "I don't understand. How did you—" There's a video. It's everywhere online. You haven't seen it? Margaret's hands went cold. What video? One of the musicians posted it on social media last night. It's been shared millions of times already. People are calling you the hidden prodigy, the cleaning woman who stunned Victor Arnault. Ms. Chen, I really think we should talk. This is a huge story. Margaret hung up without saying goodbye. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She stared at it for a long moment, then opened the social media app her youngest sister had installed for her months ago. She never used it. She didn't even know how it worked properly. But now her screen was full of notifications. Hundreds of them, thousands, messages from strangers, friend requests from people she had never met. She clicked on the first video link with trembling fingers. There she was on the screen, walking toward the piano in her cleaning uniform. The video had been edited to show Victor's mocking smile, his gesture toward the piano, the other musicians laughing. Then it showed her playing. The camera shook a little, but you could hear everything. The music was crystal clear. You could see Victor's face change from amusement to shock. You could see her tears. The video had 7 million views. 7 million people had watched her cry while she played piano. The comment section was endless. Most people were amazed, calling her talented, saying she deserved better. Some were angry at Victor for being cruel. A few questioned whether it was real or staged. Margaret's phone rang again. Then again. Then it didn't stop. Different numbers, over and over. She turned it off completely and sat in silence, trying to breathe. How had this happened? She had been invisible for so long. That was how she survived. She worked her jobs, sent money to her siblings when they needed it, kept her head down. She didn't want attention. She didn't want people asking questions about her past. But now everyone was asking questions. The knocking on her door started around noon. Reporters, Margaret assumed. She didn't answer. She sat on her couch with the curtains closed, listening to them knock and call out questions through the door. Eventually they left, but she knew they would come back. By evening, she had to turn her phone back on. Her siblings were probably worried. Sure enough, she had 53 missed calls from her younger brother Daniel, her sister Hannah, and the youngest Lucy. There were dozens of text messages, increasingly frantic. She called Daniel first. He answered before the first ring finished. Margaret, oh my God, we've been trying to reach you all day. Have you seen it? Everyone is talking about you. I saw it, Margaret said quietly. I don't know what to do. What do you mean? This is incredible. Do you know how many people are watching that video? A talent agent already reached out to me trying to find you. Concert halls are posting about you. That famous pianist guy, the one who was mean to you? He posted an apology this morning. It's gone viral too. Margaret closed her eyes. Daniel, I don't want this. I just want things to go back to normal. There was a long pause. Normal? Margaret, you've been cleaning offices for 15 years. You gave up everything for us. Don't you think you deserve something better? I chose that life. I made my peace with it, did you though? Daniel's voice was gentle now. Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who's been running away from who they really are for a very long time. After they hung up, Margaret sat in the dark and let herself remember. Really remember for the first time in years. She had been born in Taiwan and moved to California when she was 7 years old. Her parents had noticed her gift early. By the time she was 8, she was playing pieces that most teenagers couldn't master. They had sacrificed everything to pay for her lessons, her competitions, her future. When she won the International Chopin competition at 19, becoming the youngest winner in the competition's history, her parents had cried with joy. Margaret had been planning her first world tour when her parents died. The accident had happened on a Tuesday evening. They were driving home from her father's work. A delivery truck ran a red light going 50 miles an hour. The police said they didn't suffer. Margaret had never believed that. How could death not cause suffering for the people left behind? Suddenly, she was responsible for 3 children. Daniel was 16. Hannah was 14. Lucy was only 11. There were some distant relatives in Taiwan, but no one who could take all 3 kids. No one who wanted to. It was Margaret or foster care. It was Margaret or splitting up the family. The choice had been obvious. She got a work visa, moved them all to New York, where the cost of living was somehow both horrible and manageable if you knew where to look. She worked 2 jobs, then 3. She sold her piano. Her competition trophies, everything that reminded her of before. She needed the money. More than that, she needed to forget who she had been. That girl was dead. She had to be dead or else the grief would kill Margaret too. The years had blurred together after that. Daniel graduated high school, then college. He became an engineer. Hannah went to nursing school. Lucy got a scholarship to study law. They were all successful now, all living their own lives. Margaret had done her job. She had kept them together, kept them safe, given them the future their parents had wanted for them. But what about her future? That had died in a car accident 15 years ago, buried under responsibility and exhaustion and the simple necessity of survival. Now, somehow, impossibly, it was trying to come back to life. And Margaret didn't know if that was beautiful or terrifying. The next morning, Margaret made herself leave the apartment. She had to go to work. Her supervisor from the cleaning company had called to say that the concert hall had requested she not return there, which wasn't surprising. But she still had her other buildings to clean. When she arrived at the first office building, everything felt different. People stared at her, whispered. A few took pictures with their phones. Someone asked for her autograph. Margaret felt like she was in a dream or maybe a nightmare. She cleaned bathrooms and emptied trash cans while strangers watched her like she was an exhibit in a museum. By lunchtime, her supervisor called again. "Margaret, I don't know how to say this, but you're becoming a distraction. The clients are complaining. They're saying their employees aren't working because they're too busy trying to see you. I think maybe you should take some time off, paid, of course, until this whole thing dies down." Margaret sat in the break room after the call, eating her sandwich alone. The television in the corner was on, showing a morning talk show. Suddenly her face appeared on the screen. The video again. The hosts were discussing her, debating whether she should get a second chance at a music career, whether this was real or staged, whether Victor Arnault's apology was genuine. One of the hosts, a woman with bright red lipstick, was particularly passionate. "This story breaks my heart," she said. "Here's a woman with world-class talent who's been scrubbing toilets for 15 years because life was unfair. If this doesn't show you that we waste human potential every single day, I don't know what will." Margaret turned off the television. She didn't want to hear any more. She didn't want to be a symbol or an inspiration or a story for people to feel emotional about. She just wanted to be left alone. But the world wasn't going to leave her alone. That much was already clear. That evening, a delivery person brought an envelope to her door. Inside was a letter written on expensive paper. Margaret recognized the letterhead. Carnegie Hall. The letter invited her to perform at a charity concert in 3 weeks. They would pay her $10,000, provide rehearsal space, and cover all expenses. All she had to do was play piano for 1 hour. They wanted to give her, the letter said, a chance to share her gift with the world again. Margaret held the letter in her shaking hands and finally let herself cry. Not sad tears or angry tears. She didn't even know what kind of tears they were. Maybe they were every kind of tear at once. 15 years of emotions that had nowhere else to go. Margaret stared at the letter from Carnegie Hall for 3 days before she told anyone about it. She kept it folded in her pocket, taking it out every few hours to make sure it was real. $10,000. More money than she made in 6 months of cleaning. For 1 hour of playing piano, the logical part of her brain said yes immediately. Say yes, take the money, play the concert, move on with your life. But the other part, the scared part that had kept her safe all these years, screamed at her to run. Playing piano in an empty concert hall late at night was one thing. Playing on the stage at Carnegie Hall in front of thousands of people was something else entirely. She finally told her siblings about the letter during their weekly video call. The 3 of them appeared on her phone screen from 3 different cities. Daniel in Seattle, Hannah in Boston, Lucy still in New York but across town in her law school apartment. "You have to do it," Lucy said immediately. She was the youngest but somehow the most direct. "Margaret, this is Carnegie Hall. Do you know how many musicians dream their whole lives for a chance like this?" "I'm not a musician anymore," Margaret said. "I haven't practiced in 15 years. My fingers are stiff from work. I can barely play for 10 minutes without my hands cramping." "So practice," Hannah said. "You have 3 weeks. That's enough time to prepare." "Is it, though?" Margaret looked at her hands. They were rough and scarred from years of cleaning chemicals. There was a burn mark on her left palm from where she had grabbed a hot pan wrong last month. "I'm 45 years old. My body isn't what it used to be. What if I get up there and embarrass myself? What if that video was just luck and I can't do it again? Daniel leaned closer to his camera. You really think that was luck? Margaret, I was 11 years old when Mom and Dad died. I remember you playing. I remember falling asleep to you practicing in the living room. That didn't come from luck. That came from thousands of hours of work. That's still inside you. After the call ended, Margaret sat in silence for a long time. Then she did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She looked up piano stores in New York City. The next morning, she took the subway to a music shop in Manhattan. The store was small but beautiful, filled with instruments that gleamed under warm lighting. A young man with a beard looked up from behind the counter when she walked in. Can I help you find something? I need to rent a piano, Margaret said. Just for a few weeks. Something decent but not expensive, the man smiled. What kind of piano are you looking for? Upright, digital. Upright is fine. As long as it's in tune and the keys respond properly. He led her to the back of the store where several pianos stood against the wall. Margaret ran her fingers across one of them, pressing a few keys gently. The sound was bright and clear. Not like the grand piano at the concert hall, but it would work for practice. This one's available, the man said. We can deliver it tomorrow if you want. The rental is $200 a month. Margaret did the math in her head. $200. That was a lot from her normal budget. But if she was really going to do the Carnegie Hall concert, she needed to practice. Okay, yes, let's do it. As she was filling out the paperwork, the man glanced at her face, then at the form, then back at her. Wait, are you the woman from that video? The one who played at Steinway Hall? Margaret felt her face get hot. Yes, that's me. His eyes went wide. Oh man, that video made me cry. You're incredible. Are you really going to perform at Carnegie Hall? I'm thinking about it. You should definitely do it. Seriously, the way you played that night, people need to hear that. He paused. Actually, you know what? The rental's on me, no charge. Consider it my investment in the arts. Margaret started to protest, but he held up his hand. I'm serious. That video reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. Because music matters. Let me help. The piano arrived the next day. 2 delivery men huffed and struggled to get it up the narrow stairs to Margaret's apartment. Her neighbors came out to watch, asking questions. Everyone had seen the video by now. Everyone had opinions about what she should do. When the piano was finally in place against her living room wall, Margaret asked everyone to leave. She needed to be alone for this. She sat down on the bench and just looked at the keys for a long time. Then slowly she started to play. The first hour was painful. Her fingers were stiff and clumsy. She kept hitting wrong notes, losing her rhythm. She tried to play pieces she used to know by heart, but they came out choppy and amateur. Frustration burned in her chest. How could she have lost this so completely? But she kept going. Every day after her cleaning job, she came home and practiced. Her neighbors complained about the noise at first until someone told them who she was and why she was practicing. Then they started leaving encouraging notes under her door. Someone brought her cookies. An old man from upstairs brought her a cushion for the piano bench. The practice was grueling. Margaret's hands ached constantly. She developed new calluses on top of her old ones. Her back hurt from sitting so long. There were nights when she cried from frustration, when she wanted to quit, when she thought about calling Carnegie Hall and telling them she had made a mistake. On one of these nights, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but she was too tired to care anymore. Hello? Miss Chen? This is Victor Arnault. Margaret sat up straight. She had seen his apology video online. It had been humble and sincere, or at least it looked that way. But she hadn't expected him to actually call her. Mr. Arnault, I don't know what to say. Please call me Victor. His accent sounded less harsh on the phone. I'm calling because I owe you more than just a public apology. What I did that night was inexcusable. I made assumptions about you based on your job, your appearance. I was cruel for my own amusement. I'm deeply ashamed. Margaret didn't respond. She wasn't sure what he wanted from her. Victor continued. I heard you're performing at Carnegie Hall. I was wondering if you would allow me to help you prepare. I have connections, resources. I could arrange practice time in better spaces, introduce you to people in the industry. I want to make this right. Why? Margaret asked. You don't owe me anything. You apologized. That's enough. No, it's not enough, Miss Chen. I've been playing piano for 40 years. I've heard thousands of pianists. What you did that night, playing after 15 years away from music, With hands damaged from hard labor, that was something I rarely witness. You have a gift that shouldn't be wasted. Let me help you reclaim it. They talked for over an hour. Victor told her about his own journey, his struggles, the times he had almost quit. He was surprisingly honest about his faults, his arrogance, his tendency to judge people quickly. By the end of the call, Margaret had agreed to meet him the next day. They met at a private rehearsal space in Midtown. Victor was already there when Margaret arrived, sitting at a beautiful grand piano. He stood up when he saw her and extended his hand. Up close, without his stage persona, he looked older, tired, human. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Please sit." For the next 3 hours, Victor listened to her play. He gave her advice, gentle corrections. He showed her techniques to deal with her stiff fingers, exercises to rebuild her strength. He didn't talk down to her or act superior. He treated her like a colleague, an equal. "Your technique is still there," he said finally. "What you need now is confidence, and time to remember who you are as an artist." "I'm not sure I know who that is anymore," Margaret admitted. Victor smiled. "Then let's find out together." Over the next 2 weeks, they met almost every day. Victor introduced her to his pianist friends, his colleagues. Word spread quickly in the classical music world. People wanted to meet her, hear her story. A recording label reached out. A documentary filmmaker asked to follow her journey. Magazine editors wanted interviews. Margaret found herself in a strange new world where people valued her for her talent instead of dismissing her for her work uniform. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. But with all the attention came pressure. The expectations kept growing. People weren't just expecting a good performance anymore. They were expecting perfection. They were expecting redemption and inspiration and proof that dreams can come true no matter what. 1 week before the concert, Margaret had a panic attack during practice. Victor found her sitting on the floor, hyperventilating, unable to breathe properly. He sat down next to her and waited until she could breathe again. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Everyone expects so much. What if I fail? What if I get up there and freeze? The whole world will be watching." Victor was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something? That night at Steinway Hall when you played, I wasn't just shocked by your skill. I was moved by your honesty. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just playing from your heart. That's what made it powerful. That's what people responded to. But this is different. This is Carnegie Hall. This is planned. Everyone will be judging me, so let them judge. You're not playing for them anyway. You're playing for yourself, for the girl you were at 19, for the woman who sacrificed everything, for the music that never left you even when you tried to bury it." He stood up and offered her his hand. "Come on, let's practice some more. Not for the audience, just for you." The night before the concert, Margaret couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through all the pieces she would play, all the things that could go wrong. Around 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and sat at her rented piano. She played quietly so she wouldn't wake the neighbors. She played all her fears and doubts into the music. And somehow, by the time the sun came up, she felt ready. Or at least, she felt as ready as she would ever be. The morning of the concert, Margaret woke up at dawn feeling like she might throw up. Her apartment was quiet except for the sound of traffic outside. She had barely slept, maybe 3 hours total. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw herself on stage at Carnegie Hall, freezing up, forgetting everything, disappointing everyone who believed in her. She made coffee with shaking hands and tried to eat toast, but her stomach refused to cooperate. By 7 a.m, her phone was already buzzing with messages. Her siblings sending encouragement, Victor checking if she needed anything, the Carnegie Hall coordinator confirming the schedule, reporters asking for last-minute interviews. Margaret turned off her phone and sat in silence. She needed to breathe. She needed to think. But every thought led back to the same question that had haunted her for weeks. Could she really do this? At 10 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. Margaret opened it to find Lucy standing there with a garment bag and a determined expression. "I took the day off from school," Lucy said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. "You're not spending today alone spiraling into anxiety. We're going to get you ready and you're going to be amazing. Lucy, I don't know if I can do this. Of course you don't know. Nobody knows if they can do something until they actually do it. That's literally how everything works." Lucy hung the garment bag on the door and started making more coffee. "When I had to give my first oral argument in moot court last month, I threw up twice before going in, but I did it anyway. And you know what? I survived. Margaret sat down heavily. This is different. Thousands of people will be there. Millions might watch online. If I mess up, it'll be everywhere. Lucy turned around and looked at her with unusual seriousness. Margaret, do you remember teaching me to ride a bike? What? That was 20 years ago. I was 7. You were 25 and exhausted from working 2 jobs, but you spent every Sunday afternoon in the park with me. I fell down so many times. I was covered in scrapes and bruises. And every single time I fell, I wanted to quit. But you kept telling me the same thing. Do you remember what you said? Margaret shook her head. You said that being scared is normal, but letting fear make decisions for you is not. You said I should try one more time, and if I really wanted to quit after that, I could, so I tried one more time. And then one more time after that, and eventually I was riding. This isn't the same as learning to ride a bike, isn't it though? You're scared of falling. You're scared of getting hurt. But Margaret, you've already fallen. Your parents died. You gave up your dreams. You spent 15 years being invisible. What's the worst that can happen tonight? You play badly? So what? You'll still be the woman who survived everything life threw at her. You'll still be the woman who raised 3 kids by herself. You'll still be my sister, and I'll still think you're the bravest person I know. Margaret felt tears building up, but she fought them back. She couldn't cry now. She had to save her emotions for the piano. The afternoon passed in a strange blur. Lucy helped her get ready, doing her hair and makeup. Hannah and Daniel arrived around 3, both having taken last-minute flights. They brought the dress Margaret would wear, a simple black gown that Lucy had picked out. It was elegant without being flashy. Perfect. At 5 o'clock, a car arrived to take them to Carnegie Hall. The driver was friendly and talkative, asking Margaret about her story. She answered politely, but couldn't really focus on the conversation. Her mind was already at the concert hall, already sitting at the piano, already playing. When they arrived at Carnegie Hall, Margaret felt like she couldn't breathe. The building was iconic, historic, enormous. A small crowd of people had gathered outside, held back by barriers. Some of them were reporters. Others were just fans who had seen the video and wanted to see her in person. When Margaret stepped out of the car, people started taking pictures and shouting questions. Her siblings surrounded her protectively, helping her get inside. The backstage area was controlled chaos. Crew members rushed around with equipment and clipboards. Other performers for the charity concert warmed up in practice rooms. The coordinator, a woman named Patricia with an efficient air, found Margaret immediately. Ms. Chen, perfect, you're here. Let me show you to your dressing room. The schedule has you performing at 7:30. That gives you about 2 hours to warm up and prepare. Do you need anything? Water? Tea? We have pretty much everything. Margaret's dressing room was nicer than her entire apartment. There was a full-length mirror, a comfortable couch, fresh flowers, and a table full of snacks and drinks. A rack held her dress, already steamed and perfect. Victor had arranged for all of this, Margaret knew. He was taking care of details she hadn't even thought about. Her siblings sat with her, trying to distract her with conversation. But Margaret felt like she was underwater, watching everything happen from far away. At 6:30, Patricia knocked on the door. Ms. Chen, the piano is ready for you to do your final warm-up. You have the stage for the next 30 minutes before doors open. Margaret followed Patricia through narrow hallways to the stage entrance, and then she saw it. The stage at Carnegie Hall. Empty seats rising up in perfect curves, tier after tier. The lights were dimmed, but she could still see the ornate architecture, the famous red seats. And in the center of the stage, under a single spotlight, was the most beautiful grand piano she had ever seen. It's a Steinway Model D, Patricia said. Victor Arnault specifically requested it for you. He said it was his gift. Margaret walked slowly onto the stage. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hall. She sat down at the piano and placed her hands on the keys. They were smooth and perfect under her fingers. She played a few scales, testing the sound. The acoustics in the hall were incredible. Every note was clear and pure and seemed to fill the entire space. She started playing the pieces she had prepared. Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Debussy. Her fingers moved across the keys and slowly the fear started to fade. This was right. This felt like coming home. She was halfway through a Rachmaninoff piece when she heard footsteps. Victor walked onto the stage, dressed in an elegant suit. He stood a respectful distance away and waited until she finished the phrase. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I wanted to check on you before the show." "I'm terrified," Margaret admitted. Victor smiled. "Good. Terror means you care. I'm always suspicious of performers who aren't nervous." He sat down on the edge of the stage. "Can I tell you something? When I was 23, I had my debut at Carnegie Hall. I was so scared I couldn't eat for 2 days before. I genuinely thought I might pass out on stage. What happened? I played the best concert of my life at that point, because the fear pushed me to be completely present. I couldn't think about yesterday or tomorrow. I could only think about the music happening in that exact moment. That's the secret, Margaret. Don't try to play perfectly. Just try to play honestly." At 7 o'clock, Patricia returned. "Ms. Chen, I need you back in your dressing room. We're opening doors in 15 minutes. The next 30 minutes felt like both forever and no time at all. Margaret changed into her dress. Her siblings hugged her carefully so they wouldn't mess up her makeup. Hannah was crying. Daniel looked proud and worried at the same time. Lucy squeezed her hand hard. "You've got this," Lucy whispered. "We believe in you." Then Margaret was alone in her dressing room, listening to the sound of people filling the hall. 3,000 people. She could hear the rumble of their voices, the excitement in the air. Patricia came back at 7:25. "You're on in 5 minutes. Come with me." Margaret followed her to the stage entrance. She could hear the announcer's voice now introducing the charity event, thanking sponsors. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Her hands were ice cold. Her knees felt weak. The announcer's voice grew louder. "And now, the moment many of you have been waiting for. She's a woman who reminds us that talent and dreams don't have expiration dates. She's a woman whose journey from concert prodigy to cleaning woman and back again has touched millions. Please welcome Margaret Chen." The applause was immediate and thunderous. Patricia gestured for her to go. Margaret took a deep breath and walked out onto the stage. The lights were bright and hot. She couldn't see most of the audience, just the first few rows. But she could feel all 3,000 people watching her. The weight of their expectations pressed down on her shoulders. She walked to the piano and sat down, adjusting the bench height slightly. The hall fell silent. Margaret looked at the keys and felt a wave of panic. What if she forgot the notes? What if her fingers didn't cooperate? What if she disappointed everyone? Then she remembered what Victor had said. Don't try to play perfectly. Just try to play honestly. She closed her eyes and thought about the last 15 years. All the sacrifice, all the pain, all the love she had poured into keeping her family together. Every floor she had scrubbed. Every night she had fallen asleep too tired to dream. Every time she had walked past a music store and forced herself not to look inside. And then she thought about the little girl in Taiwan who had first touched a piano. The way music had made her feel like she could fly. The way notes had become her language for things too big for words. She placed her fingers on the keys and started to play. The first piece was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It started soft and melancholic, and Margaret poured every ounce of emotion she had into it. This wasn't about technical perfection anymore. This was about telling her story through music. This was about honoring the girl she had been and the woman she had become. The music swelled and grew. Her fingers flew across the keys. There were maybe a few notes that weren't perfect, a couple of moments where she hesitated slightly. But it didn't matter, because what she was creating was real and raw and true. She transitioned into Chopin, then Debussy. Each piece was a chapter of her life played out in melody and harmony. The hall was completely silent except for her music. No one coughed. No one whispered. Everyone was caught up in what she was creating. For 1 hour, Margaret Chen was exactly who she was always meant to be. When Margaret played the final note, she kept her hands on the keys for a long moment. The sound faded slowly into silence, and for 3 heartbeats the entire hall remained completely quiet. Margaret lifted her hands and placed them in her lap, unsure what to do next. Had she failed? Had she disappointed everyone? Then the applause started. It wasn't polite applause or even enthusiastic applause. It was a roar. 3,000 people rose to their feet at once, clapping and cheering with an intensity that made the whole building seem to shake. Margaret looked up, finally able to see beyond the first few rows. Everyone was standing. Everyone was applauding. Some people were crying openly. Margaret stood up from the piano bench, her legs unsteady. She tried to bow, but her knees almost gave out. The applause continued. 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7. People didn't want to stop. The sound washed over her like a wave, and suddenly Margaret was crying too. 15 years of grief and loss and sacrifice poured out of her all at once. She bowed again, wiping her face, trying to compose herself. But the audience wouldn't let her leave. They kept clapping, kept shouting. Finally, Patricia appeared from the side of the stage. "They want an encore," she said, smiling. "Can you play one more piece?" Margaret nodded, unable to speak. She sat back down at the piano and played a simple piece, a lullaby her mother used to sing. It was short and sweet and full of love. When she finished, the applause started again, somehow even louder than before. Backstage, her siblings mobbed her. Hannah was sobbing. Daniel lifted her off the ground in a hug that squeezed all the air from her lungs. Lucy just held her hand and kept saying, I told you, over and over. Victor appeared through the crowd of well-wishers and organizers. He had tears in his eyes. "That was extraordinary," he said. "Margaret, I have heard the greatest pianist in the world. What you just did ranks among the most powerful performances I have ever witnessed. The emotion, the honesty, the sheer courage it took to be that vulnerable in front of 3,000 people. That's what music is supposed to be." The next hour was a blur. People wanted to meet her, congratulate her, take pictures with her. Critics who had come to write reviews couldn't stop praising her performance. The charity organizers told her that donations had spiked during her performance, with people giving more than they had planned because they were so moved. A representative from a major recording label found her in the dressing room. "Ms. Chen, I know this is overwhelming, but I'd love to talk to you about recording an album." "No pressure, just think about it. Here's my card," a concert promoter approached. "I want to book you for a tour. 10 cities starting in 3 months. We'll make it work around your schedule." A documentary filmmaker. "Your story needs to be told properly. I want to make a film about your journey." Margaret felt like she was drowning in opportunity. Everything she had given up 15 years ago was suddenly being offered back to her, multiplied by 100. Should have felt amazing. It should have felt like a dream come true, but instead she felt exhausted and overwhelmed and strangely empty. By 11 o'clock, Patricia finally rescued her. "Ms. Chen needs to rest. Everyone can contact her agent for business inquiries." Margaret didn't even have an agent, but Patricia's authoritative tone made people back off. In the car ride home, her siblings chattered excitedly about everything that had happened, but Margaret just stared out the window at the New York streets passing by. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't figure out what. Over the next few days, the video of her Carnegie Hall performance went even more viral than the original Cleaning Woman video. It had over 20 million views in 3 days. News outlets around the world picked up her story. She was interviewed on morning shows, evening shows, podcasts. Everyone wanted a piece of her story. The offers kept pouring in. Record deals, concert bookings, endorsement opportunities. A publisher wanted her to write a memoir. A Hollywood producer wanted to option her life story for a movie. The numbers being thrown around made her dizzy. She could make more money in 1 year than she had made in the entire 15 years of cleaning. Margaret should have been ecstatic. This was everything she had lost coming back to her. This was vindication. This was success. This was the happy ending everyone wanted for her. But she couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She felt anxious all the time, like she was waiting for something bad to happen. She tried to practice piano, but every time she sat down, she felt pressure crushing down on her. Now when she played, she heard mistakes. She heard all the ways she wasn't as good as she used to be. All the years of practice she had lost. 1 week after Carnegie Hall, Margaret had a meeting with Victor at a coffee shop. He took one look at her face and frowned. "You're not happy," he said. It wasn't a question. Margaret stirred her coffee, not meeting his eyes. I should be. Everyone keeps telling me how lucky I am, how this is a miracle. But I just feel lost. Because you're being pulled in 1,000 directions by people who all want something from you. Record labels want your talent. Promoters want your story. The media wants your inspiration. But what do you want? Margaret looked up at him. I don't know. A month ago I knew exactly who I was. I was a cleaning woman who used to play piano. That was my whole identity. Now everyone wants me to be this other person. This inspirational comeback story. But I don't know how to be her. Victor leaned back in his chair. Can I tell you what I see? I see a woman who spent 15 years sacrificing for others. You gave up your dreams for your siblings. That was beautiful and selfless and necessary. But now they're grown. They have their own lives. And you have a choice to make. Who do you want to be now? Not who everyone expects you to be. Who do you actually want to be? That question haunted Margaret for days. Who did she want to be? She thought about the life everyone was offering her. Concert tours. Recording sessions. Fame and money and recognition. On paper it sounded perfect. But when she really imagined it, she felt tired. The idea of traveling constantly, performing for crowds, living under scrutiny, it didn't excite her. It felt like another kind of cage. What had actually made her happy? Playing piano in her apartment late at night with no one watching. Teaching Lucy to ride a bike. Making dinner for her siblings when they were young. Helping people. 2 weeks after Carnegie Hall, Margaret made a decision. She turned down the recording contract. She turned down the concert tour. She turned down the movie deal. People thought she was crazy. Her manager, who she had hired to handle all the offers, nearly quit. But Margaret knew what she wanted now. She used the $10,000 from Carnegie Hall, plus some money Victor helped her access from other opportunities, to rent a small space in Queens. She bought used pianos, fixed them up, and opened a music school. The school was specifically for kids who couldn't afford regular music lessons. Kids from poor families, immigrant families, kids whose parents worked multiple jobs and couldn't drive them to expensive music academies across town. Margaret charged nothing for lessons. She funded the school through donations and benefit concerts that she would perform a few times a year. On the first day the school opened, 12 kids showed up. Within 6 months, she had over 80 students. She hired 2 other teachers to help her. Victor volunteered his time 1 afternoon a week, teaching master classes. Margaret's siblings didn't understand at first. You could be famous, Daniel said. You could be rich. Why would you give that up to teach kids in Queens? Because this makes me happy, Margaret said simply. For 15 years, I thought I had given up music forever. Now I realize I didn't lose it. I just found a different way to share it. One of her students was a 10-year-old girl named Keiko. She was painfully shy and lived with her grandmother in a 1-bedroom apartment. Her father worked nights as a security guard. Her mother had died when she was 5. Keiko had seen Margaret's video online and had walked 45 minutes to find the music school. Margaret saw herself in Keiko immediately. The same hunger for music, the same fear of taking up too much space in the world. She worked with Keiko twice a week, teaching her piano and encouraging her to be brave. 6 months after the school opened, Margaret organized a small recital for her students. Nothing fancy, just a chance for the kids to perform for their families. Keiko was terrified, but Margaret convinced her to play. When Keiko sat down at the piano and played a simple Mozart piece, her father started crying. After the recital, he came up to Margaret and grabbed her hands. "Thank you," he said in broken English. "You give my daughter something I cannot give. You give her hope." That night, Margaret went home to her small apartment and sat at her rented piano. She thought about the path not taken, the fame and money she had turned down. She wondered sometimes if she had made the right choice. Then she thought about Keiko's face when she played, the pure joy and concentration, the way music had given her confidence. Margaret thought about all her students, each one carrying their own stories, their own dreams. She started playing, not for an audience or a recording, but just for herself. The music filled her tiny apartment, spilling out the windows into the New York night. Her neighbors heard it, some of them, and paused in their own lives to listen for a moment. Margaret played and realized that this was what she had been missing at Carnegie Hall. Not the technical perfection or the applause, not the recognition or the success. What she had been missing was purpose. She had spent 15 years thinking she had lost her purpose when she gave up her concert career. But she had been wrong. Her purpose wasn't to be famous. It wasn't to be the best pianist in the world. Her purpose was to use music to connect with people, to heal, to give hope to those who needed it most.